Welcome to Second Viewing. New look, same great taste. I'm Kyle.
I'm Dan.
Shaka bra. Today on the cast, we're back. It's season 2 of the podcast. We're here to talk about The Lobster. Daniel, how excited are you?
Well, I'm super pumped to do this film, first of all, but I'm also pumped that we're able to record in a new studio. Paved Arts is allowing us to use their studio, which is fantastic for the cast. It's a lot of new equipment, a little bit of a learning curve, but we're getting used to it and
we're feeling good.
enjoying it.
We're feeling good. We got a lot of new tools, a lot of new tricks of the trade to learn, but overall, I think it's a good thing.
I mean, this treated sound room is fantastic, man. It's a little warm in here, but
she's Stevie.
It's a little Stevie in here, but other than that, it's fantastic.
You could almost say that we're boiling like lobsters, you know?
Yeah, you could almost say that. I don't know if you would, but you could.
Well, I guess that's a beautiful segue into the film this week, which we have chosen as our premiere for the season 2. This is The Lobster. It's a 2015, Canada 2016 film. It's one of those European releases that slowly trickles its way through the North American market. We had a chance to see this about a month ago now, and we were like, this is the film we have to do for the podcast,
Absolutely.
Bringing it back.
It's definitely a very interesting, artsy style film, right up our alley as far as our tastes go.
Yeah, I think it's one of those movies that we knew just needed a second viewing at the very least, and we wanted to bring it to the audio recording for you folks today. So we ended up watching this together just a couple nights ago, and we were like, let's just sit down, let's talk about how it was the first time around, and let's get excited for the second time. So
exactly. So our second viewing was actually last night.
Yeah, and what we're gonna do is just jump into a little synopsis of the film real quick for y'all.
Yeah, give you a little overview, and then we've got some points of discussion to follow that.
A little bit of a format change, but we think we're gonna roll with it. You know, if you have any comments or questions, concerns, let us know. We can always take that into consideration, but we just want to try it out, and that's kind of the vibe, I guess. So
absolutely. Good? All right, let's jump into it.
All right, well, here we are. So The Lobster is a 2015-2016 film, like I just said, by Yorgos Lanthimos. I probably butchered that name, but it's kind of whatever at this point. The film is set in a near-future dystopian society in which there's a strong emphasis on relationships. Our main character, David, played by the wonderful yet kind of a douchebag Colin Farrell, goes to a hotel where he is meant to find a mate within 45 days, or he's going to be turned into an animal, in which he chooses that he will turn into a lobster, hence the title of the film. He and other hotel guests struggle to find a mate, but when his prospect kind of goes awry, he escapes to the forest, in which he comes across his partner, known as the girl, what is it, the short-sighted girl?
Short-sighted girl. Yeah, they share a disability, which is not being nearsighted, but short-sighted.
Yeah, and I guess we'll get into that in just a minute here. She's played by Rachel Weisz, and, you know, they're known as the loners in the forest. The loners often go into the city, kind of interact in their own way, but despite that, they also have their own rules and regulations. It's kind of the gist of the film right there.
Differs very much from the hotel.
Yeah, but, you know, at the same time, they have a lot of commonalities, I think.
Yeah,
and that's kind of, I think, this idea of escapism, that you can't really escape your own problems, is definitely a theme in this film.
Right, it needs to be faced. So a couple of points of discussion that we wanted to jump in and talk about first. Number one is sort of the dark comedic undertones.
Yeah.
Now, if you're the type of person who likes a British comedy or something in that similar vein, I wouldn't call this a comedy, but there's definitely, it's a little bit silly. I mean, we talked about this when we were watching the movie the other night, and the plot is, I mean, the fact that you could be turned into an animal of your choosing, it's a little silly.
Yeah, and the characters' animal choices are silly. The lobster itself is kind of silly. But yeah, no, the dark comedic undertone is there. Mm-hmm. And you bring up the BBC, and this is kind of one thing we were joking about earlier, was like, I felt like this movie was as if, you know, Wes Anderson had the chance to direct a BBC television series. This is kind of the direction he would go with. Because it's very kind of quirky, I guess you could say, in a sense, but maybe a little bit darker than his style, to be fair. But that being said, it kind of reminded me of that.
Definitely. It toys on the idea of death a lot. Like, it definitely dances around that whole...
It romanticizes it with a degree, like, the lack of empathy and, you know, kind of care for human life is so prevalent, and you kind of... It's one of those things that's kind of jarring at first when you start watching the film, but as the film progresses... you're more and more comfortable with whatever world there's building for you. That being said, beautiful world building.
Yeah,
I felt like
absolutely.
just completely sucked into this movie. I think that's probably one of the reasons why we want to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, they don't give you a ton of details about the world itself. More or less, the rules pertaining to the hotel and the group of loners.
Right. And, there's a lot of dialogue in this movie, but not a lot of it, well, not too much of it is really descriptive of what's going on. It's more so descriptive of how things should be set up. It's like, please be at the hotel room in approximately 5 minutes, and from there on, you'll be eating your dinner, and if you don't eat your dinner, you will be executed. It's kind of this, like, really risk and reward system they kind of set up for you.
Definitely one of the scenes that struck me as being dark and lightly comedic was when, I guess you could say one of the close friends that Colin Farrell makes in the hotel, played by...
John C. Reilly?
John C. Reilly, yeah, one of the stepbrothers.
Great film, by the way.
There's a scene where he's eating breakfast, and now what's interesting about this is before bed, your dominant hand is handcuffed to the back of your pants, so you can't masturbate.
And isn't your pants locked as well at some point?
Yeah, and your pants are locked too. Well, somehow they discovered that John C. Reilly had masturbated or found a way to masturbate. And they come to him while he's eating breakfast with a toaster, and they force his hand into the toaster as punishment for doing it.
Yeah. It's a really good scene to bring up because the scene's kind of set up in a funny way. You're like, oh, I got caught masturbating. And John C. Reilly is just like kind of the perfect actor for this movie because you can't take him totally 100% serious, but at the same time, he means what he's saying. So it's this weird kind of situation, but then when he gets his hand in the toaster, you feel really like it's very jarring.
Yeah, and they're holding his hand burning in this toaster.
And he's
like
screaming.
It's almost he's screaming. It's kind of a graphic scene, really.
Also, this is maybe something we didn't really talk too much about, but like the score in this movie, it's like this weird like psycho-esque like dur, dur, dur.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very it adds to the haunting feeling, I'd say, to a degree. Yeah, I think that's something to bring up for sure is like this comedic undertone that is in all this darkness, and they're trying to find love and they're wanting to kind of be accepted. And I think that's kind of like an awkward thing, whether, whatever age you're at, I guess. But behind that are all these, like, expectations and stipulations on how you're supposed to do that. And that's kind of where the comedy meets, like, the dark side.
Undertones, yeah. And I think the punishment and the severity of it is, really brings forward the sort of darkness in it. It's just not accepted, that plain and simple.
Right.
And everyone seems to just abide by the rules, just accept the fact that there is these rules, and that's it. And there's strict punishment for not abiding by them. Almost one example is later in the movie when we meet the heartless girl.
Right. Great girl.
She's totally ruthless. She murders Colin Farrell's dog, which he had been to the hotel prior and chose to become a dog, the dog being his brother. So essentially, she has killed his brother in a dog form to test him to see if he really is as heartless as she is. And it's sort of this, it's
like just for reaction.
Yeah, it's just for reaction. And it's like, that's where I kind of got this really, really dark vibe. It's definitely less comedic in that scene, but at the same time, it's kind of very much pushing the dark and the comedy in certain aspects. I mean, you get a little bit of comedy through it as well. For example, when the hotel manager walks into the room on the first day that Colin Farrell arrives, she says, "Have you thought about the choice of animal that you'd like to be turned into if it comes to that?" Yeah. And he says, "A lobster," and she says, "Most people's first choice is dogs. That's why we have so many dogs in the world." And so that's kind of like, it's sort of solely or lightly comedic.
Right.
Whereas on the flip side, the scene where the heartless girl kills the dog is very much...
It's very dark.
And there's this contrast where there's darkness and comedy in the same scene, and then there's just some straight up dark scenes and some straight up comedic scenes. It's kind of weird balance that is covered throughout the movie and layered.
And like the darker scenes are so much more prominent, it feels like. Like the scene with the heartless woman you bring up is definitely one of them. There's like two
Yeah.
one or two more that are just like kind of just dark and just like
Right.
a little too much to take in.
I almost think that sometimes, a dark scene sticks with you more than a happier comedic scene
It's
does
true.
sometimes,
It's true. But to be honest, they don't stick with me too much from this movie, only because I feel the movie's setting you up to kind of accept those ideas within the world.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't seem too out of the ordinary. It's like, well, I mean, they said she was heartless from the beginning. 5 minutes into the movie, we found out she had no heart. The fact she did that doesn't really surprise me too much.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's not a huge surprise, but
Yeah.
it definitely reinforces the idea in the world.
No, I completely agree. And this whole idea of like, pleasure equals pain sort of thing. Like there's the idea of like sex is kind of strange in this film. Like especially in the hotel when they make I guess I make an assumption on this because again we don't get a lot of information, but we assume that every night when Colin Farrell or anyone's character goes to sleep, they kind of get like a lap dance from one of the maids right before they're about to like finish, and then it's like, okay, we got to leave now. Sorry.
Yeah, so
just to like remind him that he needs to find a mate, or else he's
really
gonna
good
like.
point, and I'm sure we'll bring this up again later. But it's crazy because we see it twice, I think, in two different instances. One with Colin Farrell and one with I can't remember who else. But essentially, the maid walks in, pulls up her skirt. She's not naked. She's got underwear and some tights on, and she just sort of rubs her ass all over the guy's dick until he's about to jizz, and then she gets up and leaves. And it's kind of like forcibly. Well, the way they describe it is the effect it has for you to search for a mate.
It's like a psychological, like, they're trying to, like, entice that, like, human, like, I guess you could say animalistic rage, right? Or not rage, but more so, like, hunger or whatever. Like,
exactly. They want you to find a mate to go back to society
with. It's like,
oh, dude, that partner.
And, like, yeah, and it does reinforce that idea that you should be finding a mate or else you're going to be feeling this pain more often than not,
Exactly.
And I think, no, it's true. They do elaborate that a lot in the film, but the comedy's still there. Like, at one point I want to bring up is just kind of the dialogue, the way people talk and dress and their mannerisms.
It's very factual.
It's so factual. It's very, like, point to point, and it's...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not necessarily natural from, like, our understanding of society, but I guess within this one, it's just how people act. It's very, like you're saying, factual.
It paints a different idea of society that is factual and to the point, and partners are more effective, or like, couples are more effective than single people.
Right.
And this whole, we need to procreate, and like, there's this need that's pushed on people. It seems to me like there's way less freedom. Now, a cool conversation that I would bring up, based on the factual part of it, is when they're sitting in the dance hall. Looks like they just finished dinner and they're looking to dance, and one of the two guys that Colin Farrell seems to associate himself with while he's inside the hotel says to John C. Reilly, have you ever danced before? And he goes, yeah. And he asks, what kind of dance? That depends on the music. Like, it's very just factual.
Yeah. Everything is kind of set up to mean something, or set up to kind of not necessarily be ambiguous, but to just kind of describe the moment. It's like, it's so like point to point to point.
It's like every conversation is another pen stroke painting the picture of what the movie is, which is kind of interesting. There's not a lot of wasted scenes, in my opinion, and it's pretty visually stunning too. Now, I don't know if you so much pick up on the comedic or dark undertones of it through visually. Yeah. Personally, I think it's more through the dialogue.
Yeah, the film definitely. If you were to watch this film without sound, it would just seem like a dark drama, 100%. Yeah. I think for the most part. Mm-hmm. One point I want to bring up maybe before we go to our next topic here is just in terms of the interactions and the dark tone is kind of bringing back to a novel, or I guess it's a film now too, The Giver. In that, it kind of reminded me of this like idea of where like you don't want to be so
free flowing.
Yeah, you don't want to be so free flowing, and you don't want to embarrass people or talk about their secrets or their personality traits. You kind of want to like take away that like identity. And in dystopian society as well. Right. But in this one, in this film, it's almost the entire opposite, where it's like people are just outright telling people's like, oh, you're kind of ugly. You have a lisp. Yeah. You limp.
Their complete defining characteristics are something that's so very surface dwelling.
Yeah.
For example, one of the guys that's associated with Colin Farrell, when he gets up and talks about his second day experiences on the stage, he says, my defining characteristic is he has a limp. It's not that he's compassionate or caring or that he really loves to do something, throw darts, I don't know. It's that he has a limp.
Yeah. And I mean,
so it is a very surface.
And it's that in itself is funny and kind of sad, right? I think that
because I think it builds relationships on something that is so. It's a surface dwelling relationship. It's not deep. It's not emotional. It's not caring. It's just based on what you look like on the surface, and how you need to uphold the same what you're viewed as.
And these traits are really important, and we're probably going to touch on that a bit more in some other topics. But Daniel, what's the next topic we're talking about?
So moving on to the next topic. Now, we looked hard in this movie, I think, because of the title, for some animal symbolism.
Right.
I think I picked up on a little bit. It's less prevalent than I originally thought on the first viewing. Like after watching it for a second time, I noticed it wasn't as prevalent as I originally thought. But I think there's still a little bit to be said about Colin Farrell's choice in becoming a lobster.
Yeah, I got the reasoning written down here. Point 1, he said they live up to 100 years. He's looking for longevity. That's admirable. Good for the guy. They're blue-blooded like aristocrats, which is hilarious.
There's a little comedic there. Oh, doesn't he also say that they remain fertile for most of their life?
They remain fertile most of their lives, and he just likes the sea, and he likes to swim.
Right. Really simple answers, but I mean...
It's so descriptive at the same time. It's so,
exactly.
There's a lot of reasoning behind that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you could look really deep into those answers, but you could also just take it as a face value and say, he likes the sea.
Yeah, that's kind of like you were just saying. When we first saw this, we thought, well, like, oh, there's so much animal. Like, there's a reason why why each person chose that animal, and then animals, it kind of represents this and that, and like that's probably true to a degree. But at the end of the day, honestly, just think it's it's that person's choice. It's maybe that's their own trait. They want to be this animal. It's not really. Right. Especially we don't see a lot of it. We see a few examples, like, his brother, he was his loyal brother, so, of course, he's a dog, man's best friend. That kind of idea.
I'd like to bring up another point, though, about... There's a couple scenes where we do see animals. Now, we see a camel in the forest later.
Right.
I think we might see an ostrich. I could be wrong on that. But one that I'd like to bring up is the best friend to the girl who dates the guy ends up with the guy with a limp. The best friend to her has really nice hair, and there's a scene where she talks about how nice her hair is.
Yeah.
And we end up finding out later she turns into a pony.
Yeah.
I think there's an association between hair and ponies and that kind of stuff.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, like, people describe, dog owners. They kind of resemble the dog they choose.
Right.
It's that kind of, or maybe your car resembles you in a way, or something like that. It's kind of this attachment to something that is very essential to your lifestyle or your life.
Or how you project your life onto objects or things.
Totally. And the pony trait's the pony one's a good point. Like, she kind of comes up as maybe not necessarily the best friend.
Yeah.
But you're right. The only thing we know about her, she has nice hair. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, what do ponies have? It's nice hair.
Nice hair generally, yeah.
So that's pretty funny. Yeah, you're right. The idea of like animals appearing though, or animals in general
strolling
as humans
through the scene.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of like rabbit related scenes a little bit later on where David meets his interest in the forest.
The short-sighted girl.
Yeah, and she always asks for rabbits. And I think that's...
She describes her favorite food as being a rabbit and that sort of thing.
I don't know. This is kind of a point we wanted to bring up, but maybe there's not a ton to talk about. I think it's more or less just important.
I think there might be a really great point between the rabbits there with Rachel Fries, where it's... what's that?
Wise.
A wise
man once told me. So.
Okay, so Rachel's favorite food is rabbits.
Yeah.
But she also is a loner. She ran away from being turned into the animal at the hotel, right? presumably. So, maybe she was afraid to turn into a rabbit because it is her favorite food and they get killed so often. Do you know what I mean? It's like maybe there's a fear of survival there where it's like if she gets turned into a rabbit, an animal that might represent her, that...
Yeah, and that's a good point. And they do kind of bring that up at the hotel where they say, what do you want to do on your last day? I'd recommend not doing anything you can do while you're an animal because, it's still in your tool set. You can still do that if you want to. Do something you can only do as a human. So that's pretty true, man. Maybe, she's thinking of this idea of, like, her humanity versus her life as an animal, and that's maybe a missing link between her life choices.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I think you're right, man. That's pretty sweet. But anyways, we're going to take a breaker here. So you guys still stay tuned, and we'll catch you later.
And we're back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the Lobster here still. We're going to kind of move on to our final topic, point of discussion thing, or the thing I thought was most important.
This is a big one. This is a really big one.
Yeah, we're saving the best for last. We gave you a little treat, maybe a little appetizer. This is the main course.
100%. This definitely sums up most of the movie. Includes, it absolutely sort of speaks for itself. Expectations of love and partnership in that world, and sort of in connection to ours.
Yeah, they kind of compare and contrast. Maybe what is common or what is expected of love and relationships in common society that we live in, and they kind of throw that in your face in terms of what they believe in and what they're trying to push towards the characters in the film.
Exactly. We see a lot of this later into the film, though the idea is definitely planted in the beginning. What I'm talking about is specifically towards the end of the film when Colin Farrell has joined the loners. He's run away from his fate of becoming a lobster at the hotel and joined the group of loners that lives in the woods and is hunted by the hotel. And he ends up going to the city. And while they're in the city, he has hit the girl he ends up falling in love with. He's pretending to be in love with her in the city while pretending not to be in love with her in the woods.
Which is something we maybe should bring up quick, is the loners in the woods, they have their own rules as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is that, they can't kiss or fall in love with any other loners around them.
Yeah, no flirting. They are loners to the core.
Which is really important to the film because, Colin Farrell escapes the hotel to kind of find maybe something better or to kind of maybe, have more freedom, I guess, essentially.
Right.
But he gets brought into a whole nother game of rules and another, dictatorship that he has to follow, really.
Yeah, exactly. Not so much as a kiss. Otherwise, you'll be given a punishment known as the red kiss, which is razor blades to the lips.
Which is so silly, again, because let's keep this in mind that at the hotel, you would get your hand electrocuted if you masturbated. And if you kiss outside the hotel, you get your lips sewn. So it's just kind of this idea that you almost can't win.
Yeah.
And that if you don't find a soulmate, you don't find love, you're better off dead, basically.
Right. And I think the contrast between that is pushing the idea of there's a place for everything, which almost pushes the entire expectation of relationship into a specific place.
And also, you're talking about these places in which relationships need to go, and I think you're totally right, man, in the way that they're all focused on a commonality, how these commonalities need to fit in place with one another. And so we see a character
that's a really good point, too.
We see a character, Man with a Limp, who we were talking about earlier, who kind of finds a girl that he fancies or he's interested in, notices that her characteristic is that she gets nosebleeds a lot. So what does he do? He bangs his head on, a table or a wall so he gets a nosebleed too, just to fake the fact that, they have that in common.
With her, yeah.
Which, again, is sad and also kind of funny and just... This movie left me feeling so awkward,
Right. Well, it's crazy to think that, everything is taken for such face value in this movie that, you need to have something in common with a person in order to pursue them.
Yeah.
Like the nosebleed. To the point where you got guys faking nosebleeds just so they can, first of all, not die, and second of all, find some sort of partnership and relationship. Now, we never really find out what happens to them other than the fact that, they're progressing in their relationship. They're finishing up their stay at the hotel. They now have a daughter, which is sort of a step-in daughter.
They're given a daughter. They don't have a child together, but like
they're assigned a child.
Which they say, if you don't fall in love right away, we'll give you a child, which often helps.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, again, it's just this acceptance. Or like this need for acceptance, and even if you're halfway there, okay, good. At least you're halfway there. Then you're not scum of the earth. If you're not halfway there, you're the scum of the earth.
Exactly. It's like it's to the point where it almost doesn't even matter if it is true love or there's a real connection there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of you're stronger as a group. It's like don't believe in you, don't give into your emotions. Yeah. It's just trust us. You're stronger as a group. That's kind of what they're forcing on everyone.
And one of my probably favorite scenes in the film. Where the loners are the ones that kind of they realize this. They're like, oh, we understand why. Why they're thinking this way in the hotel and why society thinks this way. So they have kind of this like sabotage, like kind of like espionage-esque break-in to a couple couples surrounding the hotel and in the hotel. Anyways, at one point...
Yeah, it's like they're trying to say you're loners at heart. You might be together in bed.
Yeah, you guys are wrong. Like, how happy are you really, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we get the leader of the loners and the woman with the short-sighted girl, I think, as well. She, they confront the owners of the hotel, the man and the woman who run the hotel, and they tied the woman up, and they hold the man at gunpoint, and they say to him, how much do you love her? He's like, oh, I love her with all my heart. Honestly, how much do you love her from a scale of 1 to 15? And he says, 14.
Yeah.
And they're like, 14's an excellent number. But, if you really want to live, you have to kill her yourself. And they hand him the gun.
They ask him who would be able to survive
who would be able to
better on their own.
And he's like, honestly, I have these, I would definitely be able to survive on my own. I have really great qualities. I just have it in me.
Yeah, to me, that whole scene is pushing the idea of that they're loners at heart. The loners are trying to show the people who run the hotel, who are forcing this idea of partnership upon people, that you're loners at heart. No matter if you end up with a partner or not, you're a loner at heart. You will always stick up for or stand for yourself.
Well, even maybe not necessarily that they're loners, but it's just that like at the end of the day, their philosophy's wrong. They're believing in something that isn't reality, and they're believing in something that isn't their own actual emotions. They're just trying to subscribe to an idea that's is accepted.
Passed on to them. Yeah. So, but what ends up happening in the end of that scene is after they ask the partner of the manager of the hotel how much he loves her, he says 14. He tries to say, oh, I'd be much better on my own. I'd be much better on my own than she would. She couldn't do it. Then, immediately following that, they pass him the gun and say, kill her. Oh, if you're better on your own, kill her. And he hesitates for a moment and then pulls the trigger, to which he finds there's no bullets in it.
There's nothing
and
in it.
It was kind of just an espionage trick.
Just
to seal the deal, just to drive it home and say, you're wrong.
And what's really interesting is at the same time as the scene's progressing, we see Colin Farrell interrupt like a dinner with the man with the limp and the girl who has
the bleeding
nosebleeds.
Nose,
And he goes in there and he like kind of tries to like out the guy. He's like, he doesn't actually get nosebleeds. He bangs his head on a table or whatever it may be. He just wanted to impress you. And the man doesn't really get upset. He's kind of like, oh shit, like I'm outed. Like he found me out. To the point where his wife now grabs him and just says like, I'm gonna kill you. Like shoves him against the wall and like is just upset with the idea.
I think was that the limping man?
Yeah,
right?
the limping man, yeah, the limping man, and he's with his now wife, who's the woman with the nosebleed.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because it seems as if whether she knew or not that he was being truthful, she didn't care. She just wanted to be with someone. She wanted to be considered a mate, and the fact that he was trying to ruin that, she was upset with.
See, visually that I get that as well, but there was no words said, but visually you get the idea that she was happy to be with him because she was happy to be with him.
Yeah.
Not because of his nosebleed, which hints at the idea that there is an essence of true love or potential true love in this world. But at the same time, there was no dialogue said between them after that.
I guess for me, I just see it in a much more cynical way, just based on this movie's tone. I feel as if she maybe has found out on her own, but she doesn't like facing that reality, so she just kind of pretends as if they, in a sense, they're all pretending, really. They're all just like, oh, you have the same trait as me? Oh, perfect. We're made for each other.
Yeah.
And, whether we don't actually have that trait, I'm still trying to pretend that, so I'm accepted in the society. You're trying to ruin that for me, therefore I'm angry at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they paint, it's almost like everyone is an outsider until you're in, right?
Yeah. But it's funny because they're chasing a reality that's not reality.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's a game of pretend, really.
Yeah, and the one point I wrote down that kind of describes a lot of this movie for me is like these characters are sucking the romance out of romance. There's not a lot of actual true love or affection going on.
That's right.
Besides, kind of the main characters in this film, which is David and the short-sighted woman.
Yeah.
And I think, we kind of see their story progress more. She saves his life from John C. Reilly. She ends up, she stabbed him in the leg or something with a knife?
She stabs John C. Reilly in the leg.
Yeah.
Who is still a member of the hotel hunting the loners, which Colin Farrell's now a part of.
Oh, that's one thing I think did we talk about this where the hunters are hunting the loners so they can get an extra day in the hotel to extend their life?
Yeah, we haven't brought that up yet.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we're first introduced to it after the dancing scene, and if it appears that they've just finished dinner, the curtains open, an alarm goes off, and everyone immediately grabs their jacket and their tranquilizer gun, to which they have, I think, 18 darts or 20 darts or something?
Yeah, something like that.
They hop on a bus and they're unloaded near the woods, to which they all charge in attempts to catch some loners.
Yeah.
Now, for every loner you catch, you get an extra day stay at the hotel.
Which extends your chance of finding a mate, extends your chance at happiness. So there's a lot of pressure and, I guess, reason to kill a loner.
Yeah.
But anyways.
And once the loners are caught, they get turned into an animal, was my understanding, right?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that exactly. But again, there's so much to kind of assume and kind of take for your own, which is a fun part of the movie, I'd say. You kind of try to latch onto this world in your own way and kind of you build this picture in your head of how things are ran there. But I guess I was trying to get to is just their relationship in the woods or as loners starts to blossom, and they do end up falling in love, and they have to hide their love secretly. And they
Otherwise, the loners will punish them.
Or else loners will punish them, and they have this very, very intricate hand signal regimen on how to describe what they're doing or how to show affection without showing affection.
Yeah,
and
there's a hand signal for wanting to fuck you. And
yeah,
I think that adds to the sort of comedy of the movie too.
Totally, yeah. It's these kind of these brash or harsh phrases that come about every now and then that kind of give some context to what's going on, or like you're saying, adding comedy. Totally. Yeah, so, but I guess, we're talking about the lack of love or the expectations of love, but nonetheless, we do kind of see a sense of true love blossom. Yeah. But I think what's interesting is that, the loners... It's
not where it's said it belongs.
It's right? not, yeah, the loners themselves are against true love.
Exactly.
And, it's funny to think that, I guess he ran away from trying to find love and then ended up finding love in,
exactly,
the strangest place of, he found love in a hopeless place, if you will.
Yeah.
But,
so, I mean, it is really kind of an interesting idea. I mean, he was just left a group that was trying to force him to fall in love.
Yeah.
And now he's with a group who wants nothing to do with the idea of romance or partnership or anything like that. It's kind of every man for themselves. We stick together only because we're stronger in a pack.
But that ends up being where he does fall in love.
Yeah, and he ends up falling in love. So it's kind of a cool contrast.
It is kind of cool. It definitely adds to kind of maybe the film coming full circle. That being said, though, my only gripe with this movie is this portion in particular of the film is a little slow. It drags on a bit. The forest scenes and them kind of falling in love, it's just not as interesting to a degree. It's important.
Everything that was going on in the hotel.
It's definitely important, and I think the film picks its pace back up eventually. But I mean, if I'm being critical, I'll be honest, that part is a little bit.
You're right.
It's a little
draggy. Does
draggy.
slow down a little bit for sure.
And I guess this is kind of an interesting point of their relationship blossoming is they keep going into the city, kind of as they do. I never was really entirely sure on why they go to the city. Did you pick up on that? The only thing I got from that was the head of the sort of the leader of the loners wanted to visit her mother and father and kind of put up a front that she's doing okay on her, or she's doing okay with a fake husband and is like successful at a fake job, and these are her fake colleagues.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's this big front that she's like hiding away from.
She's trying to remain a part of the society she's essentially exiled herself from.
Right. Was there anything else you caught on?
Well, they went into the mall. I remember Colin Farrell's character getting some back rub because, as we know, he had a sore back throughout the movie, or he had a rough back.
Yeah.
They get some supplies or go shopping. There was also a comment made from Colin Farrell to the short-sighted girl saying, "Are you going to get anything nice for yourself while we're in the city? Is there anything left on your list?"
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, going to like the corner store or something. Like it's the idea of going for a treat, I guess. It's like,
and I think maybe just general supplies. I mean, they are surviving the woods, so for all we know, they could be picking up a bag of rice or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. They're getting supplies. No, that's a good point. But like again, like we were talking, you don't really get a lot of information. You don't really know.
Yeah.
But like these scenes in which they are kind of conversing with the leader's parents, that's kind of the only time that David and his love interest get to be like physical. They get a kiss in front of their parents, of the leader's parents, because they're a couple. That's what couples do, kind of thing. Even though they're a fake couple, but that's kind of enlightens the fact that this is their actual instinct. This is what they want to be doing. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the leader catches on to like what they're actually. She gets the idea like, they're actually like.
She gets a hint that they're flirting or being a little too aggressive.
Yeah, they're not just putting up a good front. This is actually.
Like there's feelings there.
Yeah, and so she doesn't take kindly to that one bit.
No, matter of fact, she books an appointment with the eye doctor. And brings in this short-sighted girl supposedly to cure her vision, to which she's wary to do.
Yeah, she doesn't feel right about it. She wants to leave, and they go in a group of 3, not 2, which is an odd number and a negative connotation in this society.
Right, they don't have a partner with them, so it's risky.
Yeah.
One thing, before we go into that last point of the doctor's office, I think we should bring up the fact that when they're at the mall, Colin Farrell's standing alone, and a mall officer, a mall cop, comes up to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, where's your partner? Do you have your marriage certificate?"
Right, yeah, it's like, where's your papers? It's the idea
exactly.
Of like
so it's like you have to be with a partner almost.
The partnership is your identity. It's your identification. It's how you're associated and kind of like assimilated into this society and like I guess the culture they're building.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And he's like, I don't have them with me. My wife has them. She's gonna be bringing them. And then she does show up. She's like, "Oh, honey, here's mine," or here's your papers. Do you need to see mine?"
Yeah.
And she's obviously done it once or twice. She's very natural with it. He's a little bit more stunted and awkward, and he's not really handling the situation terribly well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. Like these like city adventures they have, you kind of start to build the bigger picture on how things operate outside of the woods and outside of the hotel, I guess, because those are the only 3 settings we really get.
That's
within
right.
The film.
Hotel woods and in the city is our only taste.
Yeah, that's essentially it. But yeah, this leader is not too happy with these folks. Like you're saying, she blinds Rachel Weisz's character, and she's embarrassed to go see David again because they can't they don't have any.
They can't do their hand signals. Yeah. They, she's no longer short-sighted. She doesn't have something in common with him.
Yeah, which is a great point. Colin Farrell's character wears glasses. He's short-sighted himself. That's their commonality.
Ground. What's cool is they turn around and take this commonality that people seem to look for in sort of before they're going into a relationship, and they turn around and take it into a positive almost, where Colin Farrell makes himself blind to be similar to her.
Right. That's kind of
by choice.
And that's the epicenter of the film. That's where the film kind of cracks down.
Yeah.
We get this shocking and very haunting scene at the end of the film that involves Colin Farrell standing in front of a mirror with like a steak knife that he specifically asks from the waiter so he can stab himself in the eye to become blind, so that him and his love interest have that commonality. They can continue to be in love. They can live in the city together, which they had escaped to at this point, and he had already buried the leader.
Yeah.
So it's funny because they essentially ran away from a certain lifestyle and ended up being part of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think just like the last bit of him blinding himself is like the quote like "love is blind." That kind of stuck with me for sure.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up when we were watching the second time the waiter, after he's comes out of the restaurant bathroom blind, just like his partner, he sits down and the waiter brings water to them, and it's sort of this like, it's almost as if it's a very normal now.
Yeah, it's like this
Things are
wide,
normal.
long shot, long take that just like is very still and quiet, and everything kind of seems happy-go-lucky on the surface, but knowing the context of what's been going on, you're like, holy shit, this place is fucked. Like,
Yeah.
things are not normal right now.
Exactly. Well, look at look at what the world has pushed these two people to do.
The stakes they took to, I guess, find love, kind of like almost on their own instincts. You know, they were pushed by society, they were pushed by another society, but at the end of the day, it was like, well, we came into this on our own, but did they really do that on their own? That was still like their mentality that they were kind of force fed for years and years.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a really interesting film. Paints an incredible world.
Totally.
There's lots of room for extra thought in it, to sort of explain certain discrepancies to yourself and different perceptions of the movie for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
These are a few points we thought were really important to discuss because it is a really fun movie. There's lots to be said.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably only scratched the surface, honestly, at this point. There's a lot to be said, but, you know, we had fun doing it.
Yeah.
You know, one small tidbit is, I don't know if you guys watch Friends out there, but there's an episode where Phoebe talks about how lobsters tend to find a mate and live together for 100 years, and when Ross and Rachel together, he's like, oh, he's her lobster. I'm just saying, I don't know if my boy from Greece was a big fan of Friends, but I think he might be.
Yeah.
I'm putting that out there right now. You guys let me know. I'm curious to see what you think on that.
Connection between Friends and the Lobster?
Oh, I made it there.
Who knows?
I went there. I'll take it as far as I have to. But that's it for us today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Season 2 is going off. I'm feeling good about it so far.
Yeah, we're glad to be back.
We're glad to be back. I'm sweating so bad in the studio right now, so we're
gonna
gonna
get some fresh air.
We're gonna call it quits. You guys take care. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, and by all means, hit us up on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud. Check out our
Instagram,
website,
yeah.
Instagram,
All that
everything
stuff.
like that.
Subscribe wherever you can. You know, check us on all the podcast apps. We're everywhere at this point. We love your appreciation, support. We're signing out.